I'm going to call to order the Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency, regular meeting agenda for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in City Council Chambers at 383 Main Street, Brawley, California. Can we have the roll call, please, Alma?
Councilmember Nava?
Here.
Councilmember Castro?
Here.
Councilmember Wortman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Couchman?
Here.
And Mayor Hammond.
Here.
I don't mess around when I say here.
That's good.
Like that?
Okay, I'm pleased to be able to introduce to the council the Brawley Police Department Chaplain, Pastor John Mark Sharp, and he's here to offer the invocation for us tonight.
I'd like to let everybody know that public speaking has never been an issue for me, but praying publicly is always frightening because everybody expects you to be philosophical and lofty and to say something that just moves you. But I'm just a simple guy, and so that's what I do. Microphone, yes. See, I already got it wrong. So let's go ahead and open up this council meeting for the city of Brawley in prayer. Father, we come to you through the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and we just thank you so much for the opportunity that you give us to gather together, even though we might have differing opinions, even though we might have different points of view, but we can get together and work towards a common goal of doing what is good, doing what is right, and doing what is just for the city of Brawley. And so we thank you for that, Lord. And so I just pray right now that these servants of the public that have been elected, that you have been put into place, would be given wisdom and understanding, Lord, to see the things that they need to see, to understand the things that they need to understand, and to act on the things that need to be acted on. We just ask for your blessing upon them, and we ask for your goodness and your grace to fill this meeting so that it is filled with peace and understanding and a spirit of working together, Lord. And because I'm the police chaplain, I have to just say, please protect our police officers that are out there. Give them a safe shift this night as they work serving the public, and the firemen as well. Give them a good night off with nothing to have to respond to. We thank you for everything that you do for us, everything that you will do for us. All blessings, all good things come from you, and we are so thankful for that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Sharp. Councilman Castro, would you lead the pledge?
Absolutely. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Do you remember that in elementary? It used to be ready, begin.
That's right.
We all started on point.
That's right.
There's some fancier guys that some people get fancy. That's very good.
Great, thank you, both of you. It's a great way to start the meeting. Okay, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Got a second?
Second.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, not it. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Moving on to item 2, public appearances and comments not to exceed 4 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. Anyone here to make a comment?
Mr. Mayor, I received a letter to be read into the record.
Okay.
Please. It's from Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, Ryan Kelly and Larry Lewis. On behalf of the Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, thank you for your assistance during our recent COVID-19 vaccination and surge events. 300 vaccination doses were administered on January 18th. This was the first vaccination event for the senior 65 and over population. While the event was successful and appreciated, we encountered a large interest from the community. Vehicles began parking 12 hours before the vaccination event, and with the assistance of Brawley Police Department and Brawley Public Works Department, the roadway was secured and parking became organized. During the event, Brawley Police Department assisted with traffic control through Jeff Thornton Park and Legion Road exiting. We are truly thankful for their assistance and support. In addition, Brawley Public Works Department provided a street sign at PMHD's request for a temporary move to outpatient services. The sign was placed on Legion Road and helped direct traffic to the temporary location. Your staff represented the city of Brawley with grand distinction. We are truly thankful for their assistance and support. Thank you for your constant support of our community. Sincerely, Ryan Kelly.
Great.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, we do want to thank everyone that was involved with that. It was a difficult situation, and people rose to the occasion.
Yep.
Alma, were there any emailed comments? Okay. No one else? All right, moving on to item 3, consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's presented.
Okay. A second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Donnie Warden, Sam Couchman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Item 4, regular business. 4A is an update on City of Brawley declaration of local emergency as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Overall outlook presented by Mike York, our fire chief. You thought I was going to take longer to say that, but
Caught me by surprise.
we got
Right here and
a
right.
big agenda, so I'm talking fast.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council and city staff. Mike York, Fire Chief. Begin this evening's update on our COVID-19 declaration of emergency with our Imperial County case counts. As of today, the Imperial County website shows that we have tested a total of 122,218 persons in our community, which is excellent news. It shows that we're getting our testing has met all the guidelines that the state has put out in terms of volume. We've had a total negative case count of 94,839. We've recorded 26,779 positive cases in our county. As of today, our active case count is 376, which is very good news. In the previous weeks, we were reporting 4-digit numbers, 1,500 persons. Our hospital census is also down with 32 currently hospitalized, 20 of which are in ICU. Our ICU and our surge capacity utilization has also been reduced as well. We've recorded 25,819 persons recovered from COVID-19. Unfortunately, as of today, we've recorded 584 deaths in our county. In our local area to Brawley, 92227 zip code, we've had 4,081 active cases and 77 deaths. Our daily positive cases, which peaked back in December at 454 cases in a single day, as of yesterday, was 8. Very good news.
Nice.
Looking at our neighbors in the east in Yuma County, very similar numbers. They've tested 132,000 persons. They've confirmed 36,124. Unfortunately, their death rate has climbed quite a bit higher than ours, and they've had 758 deaths. Mexicali, they report their numbers slightly different. They don't show total tested, but they've recorded 16,203 positive and 2,640 deaths. However, they're showing as of today only 206 persons active. Blueprint for a safer economy. I can report that we have some good news for once. Although our case rate remains high in terms of numbers per 100,000, the Imperial County case rate is registered as 18.4 persons. The state records as 24.2, and I've described that difference is in how they count our community, whether they include inmate populations and a few others as well. However, our positivity rate is now 7.5 by county metrics and 6.5 by our state metrics, both of which would put us into the next tier. We're in the purple or substantial tier. The next tier is widespread. I'm sorry, I had that backwards. Widespread is where we're currently. Substantial is the next tier. So if we get our total positivities down, then we may be able to apply. The Imperial County Health Department may be able to apply for us to move to the state next tier, which is good news. Our health equity metric is also at 7.5, and that again is the test positivity rates between the most disadvantaged neighborhoods with the total population. Our alternative care site out at IVC as of today only had 2 patients in it. They have reduced their staffing in accordance with their patient volume. Here in our Brawley Fire Department, our EMS response has actually stabilized in terms of COVID response calls. We've responded since the declaration of emergency to 282 calls for service that were COVID related and 140 calls that were COVID positive, those numbers did not change very much since our last meeting. COVID-19 vaccination, probably the hottest topic regarding COVID-19 currently. Everybody's wondering what's going on. I did report in our last meeting that the state has included the 65 and older public population in all tiers at an 80-20 split, which means every tier that comes out, so tier 1A1, or I'm going to get that wrong, each tier. So the first one that came out was frontline medical and first responder EMS. The state has now included 80% of the available vaccines go to the public that are 65 and older, which, as Mr. Salcido just read out, that was part of that vaccination clinic that Pioneers held. There was another one recently. We are in the current phase, includes law enforcement. I am getting reports that corrections and law enforcement officers are getting. I spoke with our chief of police, Chief Duran, this afternoon, and there is word that Brawley police officers will be offered the vaccine hopefully within this week. As always, we're continuing to work with our local, state, and federal partners, can coordinate our continued response, achieve our goals, and secure PPE and supplies. If there is any questions, I will do my best to answer.
None for me.
Not out of the woods yet, but we're showing good trends. So we're hoping we're 8 days past Super Bowl and we're 2 days past Valentine's Day. So we're hoping that everybody was wise and followed guidelines and we won't see another resurgence as we saw following Thanksgiving and Christmas. So fingers crossed.
Valentine's is a big one, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. Okay. We'll move on to item 4B, which is a discussion and potential action to approve resolution number 2021- resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, adopting the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. This is presented by Fire Chief Mike York, and it's very short, backup, pages 38 through 472.
We read every.
Can you please present page by page?
Yeah, could you
I was
go-
actually going to say we'll be reading through every page this evening to make sure it's read in the record.
I don't want to miss anything.
That'll be the day.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, presented to you is the Imperial County's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. To boil that 400-page document down, back in 2000, the federal law, the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, required that every jurisdiction maintain a plan like this. Essentially, it's a plan that recognizes, designates, and develops mitigation efforts for any hazards that your community faces. As you can see, or you can tell, this plan would be quite exhaustive for smaller communities to develop. We're very fortunate the Imperial County Fire Department and the Office of Emergency Services received funding through a grant, and they've been able to do this plan and update every 5 years. This is the newest iteration of that plan. So there's no fiscal impact to the city of Brawley. We're simply adopting the plan that they have developed. Most of it is essentially it's guidelines for future activities to make sure that we're following directions put in place by FEMA so that we are mitigating any potential disasters that we have. And also by having this plan in place, it makes us eligible to receive disaster mitigation federal dollars.
Was there anything in there that you were concerned about?
No, nothing in particular. Obviously it looks at the major issues that our city is going to face, which are earthquakes, flooding. There is some stuff in there regarding biohazards, et cetera. So it's a very comprehensive plan. It was developed through a consulting firm, and it's an update of what we already have had in place. And we coordinated and worked with Imperial County Fire Department and Office of Emergency Services to develop.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. Motion to approve.
Castro
Resolution.
made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, Okay.
Thank you.
The resolution is
Thank you.
passed.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item 4C, discussion and potential action to approve first reading of ordinance number 2021 ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, adopting rules and regulations for sidewalk vendors that choose to do business in city parks. This will be presented by City Attorney Bill Smurden. Backup is on pages 473 to 481.
Yes, good evening. This is the same proposed ordinance that we've had the last couple of council meetings. We received a little bit more input from Councilmember Couchman and from Mayor Hamby, and those things have been incorporated, and I think it's pretty reasonable and ready to go.
Okay. Anyone want to, is there any discussion to this, or anyone want to make a motion to approve it?
This is George. I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Okay.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Item 4D, presentation of fiscal year 2021-2022 mid-year budget review by Tyler Salcido, Finance Director.
Get set up here.
Whoa,
Whoa,
broken.
whoa.
We'll have to charge that to the fire department.
That's
Fire department, yeah, I think.
That's our gag microphone. We always trick people with that one.
We should move, well, we should, I think we should move broken. Yes, sir. Oh, not at all. I got the COVID vaccine and the test one, so
Thank you. We do have the blockage.
you don't
there.
scare me.
Okay, before you today is the mid-year 2021 budget review for July through December. Let's see, how do we operate this? Page down, there we go. Okay, so the purpose of this is we're going to have a budget overview, review of the significant funds, and then we'll review some snapshots of the actual versus projected. So, right, what you have here is back in July, we approved the 2021 budget, and this is a brief summary of our beginning balances, our current revenues for the 2021 year, and current expenditures with an ending balance of 90,000 and change there, 90 million and change, excuse me. For the general fund reserve use for this fiscal year, there will be no operational deficit budgeted due to use of the highway relinquishment interest of about $105,000 round figures. So basically what that's saying is we're going to have the goal is to have a balanced budget at the end of the year. Now, let's see, page down. Okay, so here we have a overall city budget of revenues, expenditures, and capital projects through fiscal year, through the first 6 months. It's every fund that is within the city's budget. As you can see there, there was $44 million of revenue budgeted, and we're currently about 40%, 17 million. Jump down to expenditures for operations, we're about 40% as well, of 15 million of 38, and we're about 17% of our way through the actuals. This is pretty good trending compared to the prior year, about the same. Some areas a little less, but pretty close, plus or minus 2 or 3%, depending. Here on slide 3, let me get my notes in order here. What you have is a comparison to the prior year that I just spoke of. You can see prior year at 42% for revenues compared to 40 this year, and expenditures of 35% this year as opposed to 39 last year. So the main fund, general fund that supports all our public safety, most of our programs, everything other than the enterprise funds, this is a key area of interest for everybody. It's good news and bad news as far as the budget's concerned. The good news is we're trending to the budget. The bad news is we're trending to the budget. What I mean by that is that We had reduced a lot of our general tax revenues, some areas about 25% or so, others 14 to 15%. And what it's showing now is that we're basically tracking to those figures. I would prefer that we were coming in a lot higher, but due to the COVID pandemic and projections appear to be pretty much on target. I'll go on to any questions on that slide? I can go into detail of each of them. You can see it's about 31% of the revenues, 48% of the expenditures, operations, and we're about 100%, we are 100% funded on the capital projects we completed, which was an AC and IT file server.
Tyler, maybe just for
Sure.
our benefit, public's benefit as well, just when, obviously you have a pretty good handle on these numbers, being that you were pretty intimately involved in them in our previous budget process. As far as tracking to, as you mentioned, with some of those COVID impacts, is there any just characterizations that you can make, just general, that clearly sales tax revenue, for example, some of those things that you've already talked about?
That will be on some upcoming
Okay,
slides,
okay.
and if I didn't address it then please circle back with the questions.
Yep.
I think we'll cover that. Thank you for that. This slide is just providing, talk about the variances when in the big, usually it was the big four, what I call the big four of our general tax revenue sources, which is a big percentage of the general fund budget, but this year I added the transient lodging tax because we had to reduce that projection. As you can see, we have property tax coming in at about 61%. The VLF swap, while it's budgeted at 2.4, we did receive a payment in January. That's normal. It's usually January and May. That'll be on an upcoming slide. I think we got about 52% of that. Here, sales tax, we have a 2.2 budgeted. Actuals last year, just by comparison, was 2.9 million. So that's been about a 25% reduction there on sales and use tax and so far, we're about 47% of our projections. These numbers are tied to these current transactions. Utility user tax about 48%. And the transient lodging tax, which is, last year was about 401,000. This year we anticipated an additional 25% decrease of about 301,200 there. So we're currently trending about 55% on that. Slide 7. Okay. This is last year's by comparison. You'll see it's about the same figures, plus or minus percentage-wise. You'll notice that we budgeted 2.4 last year on sales tax, but like I said, the actuals came in at 2.9 by the end of the year. We were trending pretty dang good. And then that last quarter, with the pandemic hitting in March or so, kind of took the wind out of our sails. You can see the transient lodging tax there at about 400 and change. That's, as previously mentioned, a reduction of about 25% for this year, 25% for this year. Okay, Councilmember Wharton, this is hopefully will answer your questions here. That's hard to read. Everybody has it in front of you. Yeah. So property taxes, compared to prior year, we have about a 3% increase, actual to date. Payments for those are normally allocated in December, April, and June. So we're okay there. The VLF swap, like previously mentioned, we have about 1.6 million, 2.6 million received in January. That's about 52% of the budgeted amount. We usually get those in January and May of each year. Sales tax. Currently, we're about 3% less than prior year fiscal actuals. As I mentioned before, budget is projected to be about 25% less than the actuals. Utility users tax, We decreased about 2% when compared to prior year actuals for this time period. Also at risk, which we're at further reduction due to increase in delinquent utility accounts, which we'll cover in later slides. I'll address that issue. And transient lodging tax, you can see it's 6% down from prior year. And again, we had budgeted 25% less for this fiscal year. And this slide just puts what we just discussed on the last couple of slides in dollar terms. Mid-year actuals, 2020-21 versus 19-20. Kind of a snapshot of just the dollars there. Part of the city's budget is employee compensation, which makes up about 80% of any of the fund's budget. It's the biggest driver of our expenditures. So what you have here is employee comp on all the funds listed, both years to view there. We have, which includes the pension, includes health insurance, includes workers' comp, all that stuff, everything in their payroll taxes. This is fully burdened employee compensation. If you look, compared to budget, departments are doing a great job of controlling that. It's something that we look at from the finance department, because being the biggest piece of the budget, we want to make sure we're on top of controlling those figures. And if you look across the board, generally speaking, right on target. Very good news, very good guidance from the department heads with their staff. So that's good news there. And below on 2019, you can see how it compares. Across the board, for the most part, we were trending lower to budget than we were at this time last year. Again, that was emphasis being made by our department heads to try to control those costs. Next is the employee comp, broken down for just the general fund by department. Again, just a detailed level of the general fund employees' compensation costs. This is basically the same story. You can see on the next slide would be the 2019-20 comparison. Again, trending lower for the most part compared to the prior year, and compared to budget, we're doing pretty well. Here's the 2019 of the same general fund departments. You can see, you know, they're close. Some are higher, some are lower. I kind of sped over those two slides pretty fast. Are there any questions specifically about any of those?
Is it typical for community development to be that much higher than 50% at the mid-year?
That is it is, I don't want to call it an error. We need to reclassify the interim building official's salary. If you look at the front sheet or the back sheet of the personnel summary, there's no allocation for any type of full-time equivalent under community development, but payroll has been posting about 43% of his salary to community development. Okay. So we'll adjust either the payrolls, the personnel summary, FTE, or we'll reverse it back out into the proper place where it was originally budgeted for. So it's not an addition, it's just classified down from building to community development.
Okay. Looks like it was the same in 2019.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. That's what I noticed. I was like,
Yeah, so, yep. Okay, on to the, what we call the enterprise funds, street tax, the gas tax. So revenues are budgeted overall for about 1.36 million. That's slightly less, about 4% less than last year's budget. And while we didn't adjust it a whole bunch, there was some anticipation that we might see a little bit less of this type of streets tax coming back our way. Again, right on target, revenue's 50%. If you exclude the expenditures for capital project, about 830, we're right there at 45%. Again, trending to the target. Okay, Measure D. Here, Measure D We budgeted about $160,000 less. That's about a 14 to 15% decline than the prior year. And that's a sales tax. So with sales, it only makes sense. With sales tax predicted to be lower, this is another form of a sales tax that comes back for road repair and maintenance. So that has been reduced by about 160 compared to prior year. Again, revenue is about 32%. That's not out of line with the prior year. It's more of a timing thing with coming in through getting paid for the county through that. If you look at operations, again, on target, pretty close, 45%. No capital projects were budgeted to come out of that fund. Next, we have water and wastewater funds. So if you look here, revenue at 7.4, and we're about 54% of revenue. These are revenue that's charged, not necessarily collected. And we'll get to, I wanted to point that out because we'll get to that in a minute. Expenditures for operations are about 25%. A lot of that is, there's about $282,000 of budgeted expenses for professional and technical services, repairs and maintenance. And to date, we've only spent about $45,000 of that, about 16% of those three items that I mentioned. So that brings the whole overall. By the end of the year, we anticipate that we'll be back up on that area. Capital projects, 70% on our way through that. Next slide, wastewater fund 511. Same thing, we're 52% of the projected revenues. Expenditures for operations down about 41%. Again, it's we've only expended about 15% of about 529,000 of those same professional and technical services and repairs and maintenance to date. So once we start spending money on those, that should come back up in line, and that's why it appears to that we haven't expended all the funds there for operations, which we haven't, but we anticipate to be there by the end of the year. Okay, water and wastewater fund, additional information. Delinquent accounts, $228,000 as of 12/30, excuse me. Prior year, same time period, was $75,000. That's an increase of 203%. Also, anticipating that we wouldn't be in a year later still under the pandemic, we had the budgeted late fees and interest, et cetera, turn-on, turn-offs of about $115,000. To date, zero charged. So moving forward, we have reached out to everybody that's on the delinquent list. We have contacted them about the county providing money to cover based on COVID issues that they would have. There's an application that they had come in to fill out. We called everybody. We posted it on social media multiple times. We ordered some door hangers and said, put the application in it. So we've done all we can to try to let people know that there's help out there. So far, $15,000 to $20,000 of that maybe has been eligible for one reason or another. So haven't made the kind of headway I had hoped with the help that is available out there.
So you're finding that there's qualifications for that program for people to be able to
Yes.
get money to pay for their delinquent utilities?
Yes, it had to be that they were first delinquent from March through November, and they had to show some kind of verification that the COVID was the reason, like job loss or less hours or things of that nature. And there's a couple other criteria that was set by the state and county. The county was kind enough to send out some of the money to us to say, hey, use what you can. But that's where we're at.
So there are a couple of problems. One is some people don't qualify because they don't fall within those criteria, but then the other issue is that some people are not filling out the application at all.
Yeah, we've had some calls inquiring about it, and while not all of the delinquent accounts, but multiple numbers have, when they found out that the money wasn't a direct payment to them, they had no interest. So we had, prior to this funding, we had sent out the finance department letters to everyone saying, hey, we understand it's tough times. Eventually, we're going to come out of this. We've offered to set up payment plans with everybody. And, you know, our goal is not to continue to shut people off as soon as we can. But, you know, it's a very intensive outreach with so far minimal results. Water fund loan from the wastewater fund. There's an annual payment that comes from the water fund to the wastewater fund. We got 10 payments left of about $102,000. Excuse me, 9 payments of $102,000, and the 10th one is about small, $6,000 to $10,000. I don't recall directly, but we have 9. So that loan that was, I think, taken out in I think it was about 2009. We're about ready to see the end of that, and well, we got 9 more years, but we are making the payments on a regular basis, keeping current on that agreement. Residential and commercial utility rates. There's no increases scheduled. Water and sewer rate study would be needed before we would even think about that. Currently, there is no date of the next study a plan, or we haven't determined when a new study, or even if council has that desire. But it expired, I believe next year would be the 3rd year of flat rates. So I think this is the 2nd year. And so the next year would be, then going into the next budget season would be the 3rd years of where the rates have stayed the same for water and wastewater.
How typical is that?
Varies agency to agency. It's a 5-year study, mostly all the time from my understanding. And the goal is to plan for infrastructure improvements, build up some capital investment to have that in there, because eventually there's going to be, as you can see with the emergencies and plus with the growth of the city, we're going to need bigger and more current infrastructure.
And the problem within the city is that that topic had been passed on for decades, and so you didn't see increases, and because of that, you know, you had shortages all the time. So, but anyway, yeah, it should be frequent.
Yeah. To kind of match inflation or consumer price index.
I think what was helpful in that discussion in the past, Tyler, when we went through this, is if you really look at the list of all the high priority critical infrastructure projects that were recommended, if we don't stay ahead of that, you just get further and further behind. So, you know, you're constantly fixing things in you know, state of emergency, which is obviously much higher in cost. And you know, I think every city experiences that, but again, it just tends not to be a top, you know, popular topic. But
Like the lining of the water treatment facility as an example.
Yep.
That needed to be done years ago, right? It's already served it's past its lifetime. And so things of that nature need to be considered. And they're expensive projects.
So maybe something that we have to address in the near future.
We can propose that in the upcoming budget. If it's council's desire, we can include that as an item for discussion.
A study.
Yes,
Yeah,
the study
a rate
piece,
study.
yes.
We
so
can't I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, in having the list, I think probably from Public Works as an example
Sure.
would be a good, you know, again, get eyes on that.
Yeah.
It's how much of it have we accomplished, how much more is there to go, and there's always something new, so.
Yeah.
And without that nexus, like without a study on we can't increase
Sure, right.
rates without it.
But you're saying, Tyler, to include a rate study in the budget for the upcoming year?
Yes, without it, it's my understanding that you don't have the opportunity to increase rates.
Right, yeah. So we would want to, we want to discuss between now and approval of budget, adding
Yes.
a nexus or rate study into the budget for.
And as I'm sure all the council is aware, they're mutually exclusive, right? The study's done, you don't necessarily have to implement what the study
Exactly.
recommends, so.
Okay.
When was the last time we conducted a study?
It was about 7 years ago, give or take. Because it was a 5-year plan, and
Yep.
I think there was a delay in the first implementation.
Mhm.
And then I think the last rate increase was not this budget season, but the
Yeah.
before, so.
And it's always a
Not
hot
that far
topic
out.
of conversation.
Another
Yeah.
resistance.
It's
Difficult time.
Yeah, for sure.
Where the prior, it was
For sure, but
time.
we're kind of, with all the delinquencies with COVID, we're gonna get pushed up against the wall with these funds.
Yep.
So that's gonna be another difficult topic that we have to discuss is how we're gonna go back and deal with the delinquencies. The
Mhm.
further behind
Yeah.
everything gets, the harder it's gonna be to bring everybody up to date.
Yes. Yep, that's.
How delinquent are accounts? Do you know if they're,
I
60
don't
days,
have an
90
average
days?
day. We could get that. I don't know what the average days of delinquency it is, but they have steadily increased from March on.
I'm just curious to see if it's more people being delinquent, or it's just
It's
so
well,
many,
yeah,
so
it's-
many accounts that are just, it's a
Yeah.
long period of
Yeah.
time. you
Yeah.
know,
The
so-
accounts have increased month over month. We've been doing analysis every month. I get updated. This last month over month increase, it was approximately 100 plus more accounts that became delinquent, say from November to December. Rough figures, about 530, 529 accounts. That's both residential and commercial, so.
Thank you.
That's a lot of money
We
for
may have
that
to
many accounts. I'm surprised.
Mr. Mayor, we may have to set up some kind of plan like the district did, where they just start them on a payment plan.
Right.
If you've got to make the payment.
Yes.
But that's difficult during a pandemic. But I think if the more you let people go, and I feel for them, but the more you do that, and then you got to collect that money
Right.
later on, it's
Mhm.
rougher for them.
It's only
I
gonna
think,
get harder,
in the
yeah.
long run.
And it makes
they
it
may
hard
be
for
making a
us
partial
to
payment
collect.
now,
Yeah.
it may have been better to have them make a partial payment as they went along, as much as they could afford, and then we look at what's left,
Well,
rather than say.
state law didn't allow us to collect. That's the
true.
reason. why.
That's true, and so you couldn't do
Yes,
anything.
thank you.
And
Yeah.
I don't think we're still in a position to do a lot, but I think we can take some steps to alleviate.
We're
this
still under state order, and there's no shut-offs. But we had, like I said, we have reached out ahead with offering payment plans.
Yes, and I think they
And-
need to,
Yeah.
the
I
public
think-
needs to be aware to accept the payment plan, though. That's,
No, absolutely. I think we need to be prepared for when they do lift those restrictions, that we are ready for them to, how we are going to enforce payment. Unfortunately, it's just something that we have to do. I mean, we can't continue that way.
Is that, Tyler, do you know if that is codified in the restrictions as we move up to the next tier? That's written in there that you can begin?
It doesn't, as far as I know, I believe, it doesn't matter what color you're in, it's a state order that we cannot shut them off during the pandemic.
So it's separate from the colors?
Yes.
They will let us know?
I-
Okay.
I think, obviously, we don't have to probably solve it in the
Right.
mid-year, but I think we need to talk about this, potential solutions. But clearly, the solution's gonna be somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, it's not, there's not gonna be some date where all of a sudden we
Right.
turn around
No,
and we're,
no.
because there's a cost to collect and everything as well. But
Mhm.
there's gotta be a graduated phase process that we can go through and just accept the fact we're gonna carry a certain amount of debt, right? Or
Yeah.
aging that,
Yeah.
may or may not
Yep.
be rectified. These are also the things that we can take to higher level government and saying that's the kind of relief that local municipalities like ours
Yeah.
need. We're following the state order, again, another unfunded mandate,
Yes.
right? And at the end of the day, we're holding the bag. So
Mhm.
I think, as an example, when they're, $1.9 trillion are going to come through the next stimulus bill, it's what's in it for cities like Brawley, right? So.
okay.
One last thing on the delinquent accounts. I think it's important to note that even before COVID, shutting the customers off wasn't the first
Yeah,
action we
sure,
took.
right, yeah.
We've reached out and offered, hey, can we help you with the payment plan, catch up, and we've always been trying to work with the customers. So.
We call it compassionate billing practices.
I know the guys has a meter reader, so the staff from the city, they'd be like, hey, remote. I'd have to run to City Hall and pay, and then they wouldn't shut me off. So that just sometimes would have slipped my mind, but they were always courteous enough to let me know.
Any other questions on these two funds, comments? Solid Waste Fund, our trash services. Again, right on, spot on budget. You should note that as with the other enterprise funds, we may have a delinquent account adjustment here when it's all said and done. It's that 228,000 is not broken out. How much of it is because they just quit paying on all three. So,
Okay.
So there might be a reduction due to collections on the revenue side of this one here.
Okay.
Airport fund. So we have $463,000 of projected, budgeted revenue. 330 of that is one grant. Another 10,000 of that is another grant. That's an annual grant for maintenance on the airport. So if you back all that out, it leaves about 100,000 of operations. And you can see we have spent none of the grant money because we haven't started the project. So that's why the revenues appear so low there.
Okay.
Okay.
Preventative measures for budget overruns. I think we've talked about that for a while. Monthly review of the expenditures between departments and finance. We examine all variances on a monthly basis. Management analyst reaches out to all the department heads, and it's a work in progress every month to try to balance that. You have to take from one account. If you're running over on another, we try to keep that and adjust to where you're over at. Where it's a zero-sum game for the most part, unless it comes to council for a budget adjustment. Also, we're going to continue dialogue with staff to, we want to probe and explore opportunities for efficiencies and cost reductions. It's a constant theme out of finance and engaging with the other department heads, other departments. So outlook, first part is the half empty slide. We'll get to the half full slide here in a minute. General fund pressures, COVID-19, until we can get fully opened, we're going to have the same revenue pressures. On the expenditure side, well, moving forward, things have changed. I don't see us stepping back on what's required to keep things clean, virus-free, the intense cleaning. So there's going to be additional expenditures that we're not going to be able to get around. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the general fund pressures, and for that matter, all the funds, because we have the same regulations of trying to keep our staff safe in all departments. Continued unfunded mandates from state and feds. We continue to get pressure about, hey, you guys need to implement this. No offer of help or money to come with it. Two examples that we're right in the middle of is SB 1383, AB 1826, both related to mandatory organic waste recycling. Been on numerous calls with Assemblyman Garcia, the Cal Recycle team, saying, come on, guys, not just the city. I mean, it's local, all agencies in Southern California trying to get Cal Recycle to work with us. So far, they're saying, just, nope, you're going to be held accountable. In the future, we'll be bringing some action items in front of you to at least plan for these things. Eventually, they threaten a $10,000 a day fine if we don't start implementing. But these are all costs. And what are they going to do? They're going to flow through ultimately to the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
So,
gonna love us.
Can we pay them in plastic trash bags?
yeah.
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 That's what they
Got lots of them
mandate,
right now
yeah.
at the
Yeah,
house.
and that's just two examples. I mean, it's just amazing how many come our way
I know.
without any thought, in my opinion.
They just throw it
I'm getting on the soapbox here. I apologize. Also, very, very important issue, the pending utility users tax expiration in May of 2022. It's a tune of
around the
about
corner, man.
$1.9 million to the budget, about 17% of our general tax fund revenues. So sooner than later, we'll have to have a plan of attack and address that.
I would say it's probably important to do it, much sooner than later, to discuss exactly how if we're going to pursue this, to see how we're going to put it on on a future ballot, you know? Because that needs to
Not
be
even a
discussed.
future, I don't even think it's a future ballot, because it's either we have a
Special
special election in
Well-
November of this year, or a special election in May of next year, and then we're right down to the wire.
Yep. Well, there's probably going to be a gap, you know, there's probably likely going to
Maybe
be a
a
gap in
gap. There may be
coverage,
a
so
gap.
let's just realize that. But we need to discuss it sooner than later, you know? Obviously, it failed this past time, but we also didn't support it, you know, just for the timing because of COVID and other things. But moving forward, I think we just need to address it sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge part of how we operate.
We should probably get that on a very near agenda, Tyler.
For either its own discussion or.
Just
Yeah.
or-
Yeah.
or-
discussion
Maybe even
and
a
direction
separate
in
discussion,
general.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep. And it's going to take community engagement
yeah.
and,
Sure.
and getting that message, the proper message out.
I mean, it's so hard to do that, you know, with Zoom meetings and stuff. I mean, it's just so hard. We're in a
Yes.
tough spot.
Really do.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really difficult.
And the next item of general fund pressure is continued increases in insurance. That's property and liability, work comp, pension rates, UIL. Just as an example, for this budgeted year that we're currently in, if we kept everything the same and didn't increase anything on the expenditures for the general fund from 1920 to 2021, I was already a $500,000 in the hole in the general fund, just from increases from those items. And that's going to be ongoing. We've just met with the JPIA folks. We're looking at a 15 to 25% in property insurance increases. Haven't seen the work comp or liability, but I mean, they just keep
We know
going
it's
up
high.
and up and up. And that's got to come from somewhere. So.
Absolutely.
Enterprise fund pressures, we've kind of talked about this all throughout, the collection rate of delinquent utility accounts, and again, the long-term infrastructure upgrades and the associated costs with those. That's something that we're going to have to address. Okay, the half full, reasons for optimism. Onboarding of the new executive, some new executive team members and department managers. Fresh ideas. We have people with grant chasing experience. We're seeing a renewed energy throughout all the executive team just from having that fresh train of thought and back and forth dialogue. So I think we're on our way to building a great executive team and managers all throughout. And that includes the people that are here already. It's just, being able to see a different perspective. So very good in my opinion. 2 long dormant housing subdivisions to break ground here in
Some wood.
next 45 days
There isn't any.
that have been dormant for years and years and years. So that's, we've been working through the challenges of that, and we're close. So that, you'll see some activity, which has been a frequent eyesore and areas of complaints from citizens, rightfully so. Also, increased inquiries and engagements from new industries and businesses. I've had countless calls, set in on just preliminary, high-level discussions of potential new businesses on Zoom meetings. I'm excited about, it just seems like a renewed interest. I don't know, it's exciting. Community engagement. Community members are always coming up to me, hey, how can I help? Engage us, let us help you. What are your challenges? That's great, and it's up to myself and staff to engage these folks and take them up on their offer. But that is also encouraging. And lastly, but not least, we have a great hardworking staff throughout the agency. They want to be part of the solution for the most part. They're open to any suggestions. They provide suggestions to me, not at all levels of staffing, and that's what we need. They're here, they work hard, and they want to be part of the solution.
Great.
Any questions?
I guess in an overall view of questions, we've seen in the newspaper, a lot of the cities are struggling right now, budget-wise. Would you say that we're continuing to struggle, or would you say that we're moving along because we took the cuts that we did, because we made the decisions that we made way back when? It appears that while we're going to have decreased revenue, we also had decreased budget. So it appears that we set ourselves up
for the COVID to a certain extent, at least to anticipate some of that. And so we look like, I know we're not in excellent shape, and we have these deficits in terms of budget categories and things of that nature, but we appear to be moving right along. Is that not correct?
Yes, what some of our maybe disadvantages of revenue options during non-COVID have actually worked in our favor during COVID. For example, we don't have, it's not a high tourist, like Orange County getting hit with Disneyland and some of those things. So that helped offset some. We did anticipate some kind of cuts. We tried to budget for those, and like I said, good news, bad news. We're about on target with everything. And expenditures for the last 2 years have been bare bones. Staff and departments have worked trying to control costs, so that all adds up, and we're not out of the woods, but we're not as bad off as we were in the past, or maybe some other agencies.
Well, I also noticed that we're not as dependent upon cross-border traffic, and I noticed that's affecting
Yes.
Calexico greatly, and it's also affecting El Centro. I think they were dependent a lot. If you go to the mall, you can see the difference in terms of just the tax-based revenue that's generated over there
Yep.
has certainly been impacted. I'm assuming ours has to a little extent, but not like theirs. We're not as dependent upon that. I also noticed that a lot of our businesses are continuing to operate. Some of our major businesses have been operating throughout the COVID situation.
Yep.
And I've noticed that they always have a lot of traffic. They always have a lot of business moving through. And by that, I mean Walmart, Vons, Imperial Hardware, well, Ace Hardware now, and some of the other businesses out there. And even some of our restaurants have been able to adapt, at least to a certain extent. I don't think they're making a lot of money, but at least they're not going under.
Yeah, there's
So I
probably
think
the
that's
most
good.
challenged group there, and
Yes, that
beauty
is.
salons and stuff. But we do have a lot of essential businesses, and they haven't gone out of business
Yep.
during this pandemic. So,
And I think the
you know,
farming industry
agriculture,
has stepped up. Agriculture has been impacted by it, but not they have still continued to operate kind of like going full bore on a lot of
been
different things.
busier, I think, for
And they've
many
been
of
busy.
them.
And so I think that's something that I think we have to be thankful for here in the city of Brawley. I know our neighbors may have some other additional issues, but I think for the city of Brawley, we have to be very thankful for where we're at and what we're doing in order to survive out there.
I know camping has been a big deal, since the lockdown began. Anywhere people could camp out, take RVs or whatever. And I was driving into the valley on Interstate 10 and Highway 86 on Friday evening, President's Day weekend, and just nonstop, glamorous traffic. So hopefully, we've still maintained that kind of sales tax base throughout that season.
To the point of camping, I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes my wife makes me camp out in the backyard
Right,
when
yeah.
I'm not behaving, so I understand.
Well, if you deliver the same kind of bad news to her that you have to us, I can understand that.
TMI.
Mr. Mayor, if I could also just offer, I think we hit some of the big topics, Tyler, for all of us with the upcoming budget calendar. I think we're going to talk about that next. So those are probably the big things. There's kind of the macro, and I think it's real important that
Right.
we stay focused on really the big issues that you have outlined here, that were kind of in the outlook. I think the reasons for optimism are really the stuff that didn't happen by accident. That's been through a lot of hard work, I think, with us as a team and a staff in the city. I mean, that just involves everybody buying in. So truly appreciate that, not just that work, but the mindset that our staff has had, our executive team have had, and we all know we're small enough to where every penny counts, frankly, every member of the Brawley City family is going to help make this successful. So we have made some difficult decisions. Doesn't mean there might not be some more coming, but just the example, utility user tax is one area where we all come together as a community. We either support it or don't, but when we do, that sends a pretty strong message that the city continues to support, wants to kind of do their share to carry, kind of carry the day. And I think with the current conditions, it's very clear, more than ever, that, I would anticipate there's cities out there that don't have one that are going to enact one because they're facing the same thing. So the only other thing I would offer up is that we continue to think in an innovative way. It's going to take that. And I know we have you know, our leadership is starting to orient that way, it sounds like. You know, you know, there's new ideas, like you said, Tyler, that are coming. I would push us as a council too to, you know, unfunded mandates, I think can be one of our downfalls if we don't go after offsets and we don't go after kind of our share of the pie, because I really believe this. Nobody's going to show up at our doorstep, the city of Brawley, and offer us, you know, relief. I think we got to get loud, we got to get out there, and we got to advocate for those kinds of things. Those are the things that I think
And
we can
federal
do.
funding, I mean, looking at federal funding sources, I know a lot of the mandates that come through us are state mandates, right? But we never, it's been a long time since we looked at some opportunities out there. I know in the past, we've had lobbyists that work at the federal level and the state level, and so that's just something that we need to consider. You know, because it's only so much staff can do, right? And going back to the comment that Councilmember Wharton is mentioning, you know, we do have to pursue those dollars.
Right.
We can't wait to see, hey, a grant opportunity is coming up. I mean, that's one approach, but look how effective it's been for us. Not very, you know, and so, anyway, sorry to interrupt, Councilmember Moore, but that's, I mean, I think you're spot on, so.
I think it'd be worth discussing, thank you.
Yeah.
It just, those are more ideas, not that they're new, but just probably more than ever, we need to put some action behind it. So I think all those things are starting to happen, but, yeah, some of the things that you said, the cost of doing business continues to go up, and, on the other side, we've already built in reductions in revenue. So when revenues go down, expenditures will go up, pretty simple. You know, Finance 101, that's the strain, right?
Mhm.
You know, so I think it's important that we got to keep doing what we're doing, because it's not going to be very forgiving, you know, I think, unless we get creative.
And not only that, but when you consider the utility user tax, I mean, it's just something that obviously there was a need for it. That's the reason why it went to the public to begin with decades ago, right? And so, you know, it's not like the city is overindulgent in anything, right? We don't live beyond our means, but it's just a critical part of how we operate here. It's necessary. It's become necessary. And it was necessary to begin with, because that's the reason they went out to the public to ask for that support. So it's just, if we are going to be discussing that, I think it needs to be sooner. All the things that we're all the topics, you know, how we're searching for funds, whether that's federal funding or state funding. You know, we need to discuss obviously what we're going to do with the utility user tax. All of those key items is really important that we discuss them soon and decide what we're going to do, not just discuss, but decide what we're going to do and follow through with that. I know it's tough with COVID. Even just having public discussion is hard, but we need to do it. So
Yeah. So we'll talk, you know, between meetings to set up the schedule for those discussions, and we can take quick action.
If I could suggest something, and maybe I'm volunteering you, Councilmember Wharton, but you have led a discussion in the past where, and I know we didn't have it, you know, in the past year or so, but if you could maybe help facilitate a conversation like we've done previously, where we're having a bit of a workshop, right, and discussing
Or
some of those
strategy
topics. Yeah,
session.
strategy session.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can work with Tyler if council
Right.
amenable to that. I guess, again, it's.
Depending on,
We're in an open forum, we're able to get ideas and obviously solicit ideas, as many as possible from the community, which is always great, but we're.
And an opportunity to educate.
Absolutely.
I
Where we're
I think you
guided.
did a really good job. I'm sorry to put you on the spot and create work for you, but it was, I mean, it was a good
Check my
session, so, yeah, right?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to.
Mr. Salcio, I'd like to see one, you could give us the exact numbers of those, the costs that came from the unfunded mandates. When we, something in the January, I'm sorry to put more work on you, I know you're super busy, but when we lobby our state officials, I like to go with real numbers, and we can compare that to our overall budget and what it's costing us, because I do agree, if the state is gonna mandate anything on us, they should have a plan also on how they're gonna support us going forward. And so.
That is a very valid point in regards to the two that I mentioned.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
Absolutely.
Nobody knows what's going to cost. I mean, we're talking about, we have to ship it out to Arizona. There's not a
Yeah.
processing plant. We're working with the franchise Allied Waste, or what is it, Republic now. No, that's trying to determine the cost and how that's going to, the whole thing to implement. There's just not a plan coming down to us. But yes, that's a very,
Yeah.
very important to quantify. Very
Yeah, no,
important. Yep.
absolutely, sir. And I will address it. I mean, any opportunity that we have with our state legislators, we should bring that up, because, it's just not fair. And for tiny communities like ours, it's difficult to overcome that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you,
Tyler.
Tyler.
So that was
I'll just stay right
item
up
4D.
here.
Now we're on to item 4E, discussion and potential action to approve fiscal year 2021-2022 budget calendar, also presented by Tyler Salcido. This time, he's our city manager. The backup is on page 482.
So we go through this process every year. We want to try to plug in some dates so we have a timeline of getting the budget. The ultimate goal is to get it all completed and adopted at the last meeting of June, which is June 15th. So before you, for this go-around, we've got it down to one general fund workshop to work through, and then the enterprise and special funds workshops, one meeting for that. If you think that more is required, we could do that, but that's kind of the goal that finance and I have come up with. And if council likes that plan or has another plan, I'd like to confirm dates. So keep us on a deadline, timeline to report back and what have you. Normally, they've been done regular meetings or special meetings in the past, depending, whatever fits, whatever council desires.
Do you have a feel for how busy the first March meeting is going to be without, if we were to not include the general fund workshop number 1?
How busy is it going to be at this point? I'm not quite sure how many items. We just, I've directed staff to let me know what they think needs to be on the agenda that have not received too many items yet. I will tell you this, it's going to be pressing for the finance department to do
Yeah, in
something
2
in the
weeks.
first meeting of
Yeah,
March.
okay.
Yeah, I think the 16th maybe. That's the meeting, that's the second meeting in March. And we could do a special meeting on the 9th or the 23rd also. That we have some options there. There's a lot of Tuesdays in that month.
I would say this, and this is just my opinion, okay? But considering you are the finance director, right? You know our finances better than anybody in this room. And I know we're considering bringing somebody on board here tonight, so I just leave I suggest I would leave the schedule up to you. And I would expect, though, that it's tightened up fairly well for presentation. I mean, it's just, I know we've had multiple meetings in the past. I don't know if they were all completely necessary. You're the expert.
That is the goal, to
Yeah.
tighten it up. So figuratively and literally, tighten up the
Yeah.
budget.
Do we normally have 2 general fund workshops? Is that
It's
how-
varied.
It's
It
been
depe-
more.
it- it's-
We've done
yeah.
more than
More.
that at times
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
we've done
sometimes you
in
come
the
back
past.
and then we send back with
Well,
more
we've
Right,
usually
yeah.
done at least
It
two.
seems like we've had 3 in the.
Yes, we've done
last
3
year,
in
year
the
before
past.
last, we had
Yes,
3.
we have.
So that's ambitious to do it in 1, but if you can, that's great. I mean, I don't know how that comes into play with the strategic planning sessions, if that needs to,
I think, yeah, no, I thought you might bring that up, and I know that's not on, I think under the current conditions that we've been dealing with, it's, for the lack of a better label, maybe not call it strategy, I think the general fund workshop's already gonna be a strategic
Right.
planning session,
Mhm.
because we're really talking about
Way.
Yep.
strategy and planning being, what actions, what course of action do we want to take in the future with the best information we have, right? So the only thing I would offer, I just want some clarification. I know it's labeled here in our backup material in April, it says special meeting. Does that mean something that's off our standard council calendar, or is that kind of what?
That was left over from the
Okay.
prior year, and I didn't catch.
Okay, that's
It could
fine.
be regular, it could be regular or special,
Okay,
depending.
but, I mean, if,
And the time, if
Yeah.
we have it at a different time other
Yeah.
than
Yes.
6.
Yeah.
the only thing I would offer, whether
Thank
it's
you.
part of a regular meeting or not, is just general fund is generally where we do,
Right.
generally, where
The
we,
most of
we
the
we
work.
put in the most effort. So it's either gonna be a longer day. I think last year we did something where the same day we met earlier
Yes,
specifically.
that's
for the
usually what
general.
we've done.
So maybe
last
A
year,
regular or special or especially regular?
It's
No?
a regular special, but it's
Special.
especially
Special.
different
There you
times.
go.
So,
Special meeting.
so if,
Like a
I think
quesadilla?
what maybe Councilmember Nava's suggesting, if it really looks like, that's appropriate, maybe that's an option, even if it's, potentially the same day. The other thing we could do is just put the slot in there.
Yeah,
Have Finance decide
just have
if
it,
it's
then you can
needed.
decide, yeah.
If not, we could start at 4 instead of 6, have on the front end workshop, general fund discussion workshop, and then
Yes.
roll into
Yes.
regular meeting with a little bit of a break too.
I like that idea because it works in with our regular meeting. We only have the one day then, instead of trying to do 2 or 3 days out of that.
Would that,
Week.
Mr. Mayor, a plan like that work, just build in, because general fund's pretty much the heaviest lift?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a lift.
I don't know what the lay of the land is gonna be in March, if we can have things open back up where people can actually show
Doesn't
up in
look like
person.
it.
If not, I don't know if we wanna try to allow for some kind of interaction through the Facebook live feed, for people to submit comments there that that we read in real time. Normally with the strategic planning session, people are making comments or writing stuff on cards. Is that how we've normally done it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it hasn't had tremendous public, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact,
No.
I'm being kind, it's had very little
Right.
public, input. And I think in fairness, most of our, stakeholders in the community usually give their input ahead of time
Right.
anyways,
Right.
maybe to us individually.
I think it's important to
So-
hear from staff, though, department heads and
Yes,
others, I think that's
absolutely.
really important, yeah. so.
But certainly we always encourage, that's what this whole calendar's about. So maybe we consider, like I said, I think the strategic discussion will already be baked into, the general fund workshop. So if we consider on the 6th, in March, if it's the 16th, let's say, the
16th,
second
I think.
meeting, just allotting for the additional time, Tyler, potentially, I'm not giving direction, I'm running it by council, if that extra couple hours for that focus, and even if we, finish on time or whatever, we can roll into the meeting or we can break and then start back into the regular meeting.
Uh-huh.
That keeps everything on schedule. For anybody else that would anticipate our normal council calendar, and then provided we're successful getting through that keeps us right on target for April to have the enterprise fund, which I think is a little bit lesser.
Right.
It's
of a
usually
lift.
less, and that's why I worry.
Pretty straightforward, not a lot.
We need to add more time, I think, for the general fund discussion. The enterprise zone one usually goes fairly smoothly. We need some
Yeah.
time, but it's not like the general fund.
Yep.
The general fund's always a much greater discussion.
And then that'll launch us right into the June budget adoption.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? What's,
So,
Okay.
so do we want to plan for 4 PM on March 16th?
3:59, no?
Better be here.
Well, it just depends on if the meeting.
4
if we can
PM.
Make the meeting go live.
Or, yeah.
4 PM on March 16th.
okay, for general fund.
For the strategy session. And so again, are we wanting to be able to take public input virtually? Or does that make the
I'd
process
have
too
to follow
cumbersome?
up with our IT expert and
To see
see
if
what
that's
our
possible.
options are on that, if we have the capabilities.
Okay,
So I don't know. I'd have to,
okay. So we'll
Yep.
have another meeting between now and then. We can
Sure.
discuss it further if we
Format.
need
yes,
to.
yes, we can discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the 16th is a good day to do it, though.
Yeah, and provided that all comes together at that one meeting, and we don't need to plan another special meeting for general fund, then just as George said, as it's most convenient for the way you guys have to put it together in finance, for the enterprise and special funds workshop in April, however, whatever meeting works best for you on that one, schedule-wise.
Yeah.
We can do the same thing there.
The second meeting?
It'll probably be the 20th.
I was gonna propose the 20th, just
The
gives you
20th
some
will probably
time
be
in
the
there
best.
if we have general fund issues or.
That's right.
Yeah, that should work.
Time, city clerk's asking, do you want to start earlier
For the
than the
April?
regular meeting?
Or, I think for both of them, right?
You can do that, and if it looks, I just think it's a little lesser of a lift, so
Yeah.
whatever we think.
If you decide between now and then that you don't need 4
Yeah,
hours to
the
get
additional
through it,
time,
then
yeah.
we can
always
bump
say
it up to 5 or
then,
6.
Like, if
Okay,
you only
say
need
so.
3 hours and 58 minutes, then it could be shorter.
4 hours.
Remember,
4 hours.
less.
Well, if we start at
sometimes is better.
4 and then we.
I was thinking 4 to 6, and then 6 is regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 4 hours.
It's a marathon.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to be clear, because I heard you repeat back, just the March is, what I was suggesting is the general fund workshop, and you mentioned the strategy, it'll all be one.
Right, I
Yeah,
guess.
okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I just want to make sure.
If we're starting at 4,
Yeah.
And when we discuss it on March the 2nd, then we can discuss whether we want to start sooner or do
Yeah.
something a little bit different or modify that.
Mr. Mayor wants to have a 42-hour meeting.
Yeah,
That's
you
what
know,
he
I'm
says.
not going to be here for 42 hours.
we could make history that way if we have
Yes,
a meeting
well-
that runs for 2 days.
Got us beat.
No, Calexico, we can never exceed Calexico.
Yeah, they quit last meeting.
They just, they go to 11 or 12 some of the time.
Okay, I think I have
Sometimes
some
they have
direction.
fisticuffs.
Did you understand the direction? Because I don't know if I did. Yeah? Alma's
Starting at
got
4.
notes on there.
March
4 p.m.
16th, March 16th, 4 PM, general fund
Be
slash
prepared for 4 hours
4 hours within a
Yes.
2-hour
With a
window.
break.
Yes.
Bring lunch, bring lunch.
with a break.
Almost bringing special quesadillas. I heard
Yeah.
George say something about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If it's,
And then enterprise fund, April 20th, starting
Yes.
at tentatively 4 PM.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Couchman, on March 2nd, you wanted to discuss what?
If we had to modify for the 16th, if
Okay.
we need to modify for the 16th and make it a little longer meeting, then say that the other one, then let's talk about that.
Have
And it will
another
be
meeting.
dependent upon what you see in the next couple of weeks here,
Okay.
I think, and
how
so.
much time do you think we talking about meetings?
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, let's,
You're right. Better make it
Right.
6
Or we talk
hours.
about discussing,
right? Yeah, let's talk about
discussing
talking about,
conversations about
right?
important.
Okay,
Goodness gracious.
let's move along.
Well, this one's been 30 minutes.
No,
Yes,
just
30
discussion
minutes.
the meeting.
30 minutes.
This was a longer discussion than the
30
budget
minutes.
update.
Chief York's 430-page
Chief
plan
York got
didn't
through
take
that
long.
report in like 5 minutes.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
okay.
He was on
Okay.
fire.
Good deal. We'll wrap up that one, and we'll go to item 4F, a discussion and potential action to approve the proposal from Urban 3 to conduct an economic analysis for the city of Brawley, presented by City Manager Tyler Salcido. Backup is on pages 483 to 497.
Okay. Before you today, Mayor and council members, is the proposal for a economic analysis from Urban 3. Growing up in my career, one of the most important things, and one of the first things that I learned, is you cannot manage what you do not measure. So I would like you guys, the council, to consider that while we go into this discussion. Some general statement of facts for the city of Brawley. The city struggles to fund all the needs of its residents. It's very difficult to include all the needed programs, services, and repairs for each budget cycle. And it's difficult to quantify the actual long-term revenues and costs of any new industry or business or subdivision for that matter. And lastly, but not least, in my opinion, the city does not have the margins to make a mistake on development. You know, we don't have the margins where it's going to cost a lot of money because maybe we shouldn't have done this development versus this development. What got me thinking about all this, if I can frame it up a bit, was a comment from a member of the community. He approached me and he stated 30% of all your properties pay little or no taxes. I'm like, how do you know that? I don't know if that's true. Well, back and forth, there wasn't really any data to support that, but got me thinking, is it 30%? Is it 5%? You know, if just say it's 30% of, for whatever exemptions or otherwise, are not paying, 30% of all the parcels in Brawley are not paying real estate tax or any other type of tax for that matter. We still have to provide those infrastructure services. We still have to have streets. We still have to maintain water and sewer. And so I think that'd be important, one piece of important data to understand. May come back that only 98%, I mean 2% don't pay. But it got me thinking. Like I said, I don't know if it's true or not, but it got me thinking, what can we do? So I started researching, reaching out to a couple of other agencies and consultants that provide this type of work that I want to bring forward. So what Urban 3 does is they are a consulting firm that specializes in land, value economics, property tax analysis, and community design. If the council approves, they're going to help the city visualize where it's leaking money and what areas produce more revenue than they use in services. They're going to clearly show our city's financial health on a map, 3D map. That will allow residents, council, and staff to make data-driven decisions together. I hope, and I believe that it will help the city determine where to invest in infrastructure in the near future to get, quote, the best bang for the buck for future development. Maybe we reprioritize certain projects that have been at the front of the line. Maybe we look at it, moving them down and moving something else different. But how do you do that? Again, you can't know what to do unless you have data behind it to support those decisions, in my mind. So the 3D map, it's going to show every part. This is just one of the things that they provide. It's a 3D map of every parcel within the city limits, and it's going to show what that parcel produces in real estate tax, sales tax, and also what costs are associated with maintaining that property, that piece of the pie for the streets maintenance or water infrastructure or sewer infrastructure, et cetera. And that's going to require a lot of deep diving from the consultants and our staff. I'm sure if you choose to move forward, especially Public Works and Building, they're going to be pretty upset with me because it's going to be intensive work, but I think it's important. So other than that, besides the 3D map, where you would be able to, it's interactive, you'll be able to view that. Anybody will be able to view that. It eventually will be on our website for access for the public. Some other deliverables, and again, not all of them, out of this service will get comparisons of the city's tax system to other cities in the county, comparison of our downtown, what they call potency, like do we have, can we make some money down there compared to the other local cities and the county. They are going to provide public education sessions to the community at council's direction or staff's direction, like, hey, let's meet with, for example, Rotary. Explain in layman terms of what we're looking at and the different train of thought of what's associated with these numbers. And of course, it's going to, analysis would be the taxable versus non-taxable land, and how do we compare to, say, El Centro, Calexico, any other local cities, and even regionally, if we so desire. So one last thing I would note, and I'm open for questions if I haven't explained it thoroughly. I know I kind of rushed through it. It is, and this is the last sentence of my staff report, it is commonly assumed that budget problems can be solved by creating more growth, yet more growth in unpredictable patterns, more costs than revenues, will only increase economic problems. What is needed is an approach that provides transparency regarding the cost of growth and long-term obligations to create a healthy, sustainable fiscal future for Brawley. Again, I go back to, council's even said this multiple times, what we're doing is not working. We need to look at outside the box, think of different opportunities, different ways of looking at things. And I strongly believe that this is a first step to where we're going from at least a defined set of data that we can refer back to and say, well, that might not be so. Let's take a look at what it's really costing us. They have the ability to project out certain developments and see what we're going to get in revenue over, say, a 20-year period versus what it's going to cost. I think those are important things to know. So I'm open to any questions.
Does this, will this study show us, maybe help us with the way we currently tax properties? Like, for example, I read in an article where some of the downtowns that were dying, a lot of the property owners who had abandoned buildings were being taxed on the actual improvements on the property that weren't very much, versus tax on the land itself. Will this look into scenarios like that? Because what I'm getting at is that I think that it will push, it kind of be an incentive for those, downtown owners who are just letting the property sit to actually make something happen.
At a minimum, it'll provide the data to consider the options that you're considering. I know in other cities, of course, bigger than Brawley, there's a lack of a better term, and it's just in vague, higher level, a penalty tax if you're not improving. If you just, for example, if there's a property here in downtown that's been sitting forever, well, every year there's a X amount of dollars that you're going to be taxed unless you start showing us that you're developing. That's, I would say we, but that's what other cities have done. There's one example of that. But yes, it would provide data where we could come up with, we as council and staff, different opportunities to look into about what we could do to raise revenue. And well, ultimately, it's not about raising revenue for the city. It's about bringing in businesses to raise the quality of living for all the citizens here and make it a place to be that people want to be.
Absolutely.
So let me ask, with respect to the sales tax data and the property tax data that they'd be collecting, they'd have to rely like on the Franchise Tax Board and the County of Imperial. How?
And they would work with, okay, for the County of Imperial, yes, they're gonna request all that data from the county.
Okay.
They're gonna go through that process, deal with them directly. Sales tax, they're gonna work with our current sales tax consultants on acquiring those figures.
Okay.
And then they would combine those together, yes.
Because our sales tax figures that we do with our consultants are, they're bulked figures. I mean, it does have some specifics on like the stores on some, when we get a snapshot of things, but I'm just curious to see how accurate that's gonna be. That's would be my biggest concern. And then, the participation between the county and the group would be another concern of mine as well.
Yeah, it could be tough to pull the data out of them, but they have to provide it if it's requested, one. And two, while not done locally, it's been done in the Inland Empire and Southern California, the exact
Right.
group here. In regards to the sales tax issue, most of that is confidential to the public, but I can drill down to any business in the city and see what they pay us in sales tax.
Very well. Another question, and I appreciate the presentation, the information. What is your ultimate goal with the data that they would provide?
The ultimate goal for me would be to make informed decisions, council, make informed decisions on prioritizing certain developments based on actual data. Like I said, revenues and costs. For example, maybe just throwing things out, maybe a subdivision with a bunch of cul-de-sacs is not the best. Maybe it's more of a long-term cost as opposed to having a subdivision with streets that go all the way through. Do we invest infrastructure for this subdivision, or is there maybe down the road some warehouse type on the outskirts of 111 Expressway that could be more beneficial first to provide
Revenue.
our direction and our where we're going to put our limited dollars to?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's a different train of thought, but
It is. It
yes.
absolutely is.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to it. It's just, it is a different, I'm sorry.
A couple questions too. So, no, it's getting me to think with some of the questions that are being asked. There's no, I'm going to go back to the first statement, that framed this whole thing, that you just, you got to be able to measure it. You got to have information. And something to think about, I think we all know this, data is really today's currency. I mean, and part of the problem is there's so much of it.
Yeah.
What are we looking at? What are we relying on? And I think maybe more than even more than the informed decisions, it's really, we can start back to the word strategy, make strategic, it really lends itself to planning. So
Long-term planning.
I really, Charlie, I want to say that I certainly like what I'm reading. My questions are more around You know, I assume in the vetting process, because I didn't really pick that up in the material, we didn't, you know, obviously this wasn't a bid process. Are there other organizations or agencies that do
I
this?
reached out to, sorry.
Yeah, so that's kind of my first question.
Yes,
is that-
I reached out to 3, had meetings with 2, and while it wasn't a formal RFP, these guys, in my opinion, have worked in Southern California and made the extra effort to show me what they could do. It was a meeting of 4 of their people, whereas opposed to the other one, we can do business in California, but currently we're not quite there, and it was just one guy on a call.
Yeah.
You know, the other ones, we'll get back to you. So there are multiple, well, not a lot, there are multiple organizations that provide this kind of work, but those are the 3 that I could reach out to, and these guys I called. I spoke with the assistant city manager in Rancho Cucamonga, where they're just finishing or working through a project there now, and got his opinion. So I checked some references on them as well.
So, and just for clarification, because data is a very broad term, right?
Right.
What we're looking at here is the potential of they build an economic model based on existing data, like property values, tax, assessor, values, whatever the state maybe bureau, BOE can offer, and all those. I think with all that, maybe really allow us to look at our city through a completely different lens. And I think we've been talking about our as we've called it, economic development position. Are you envisioning this could really even go hand in hand? So strategic, as they're pursuing opportunities, like you said, whether it be development, whether it be where we invest these precious dollars we're going to talk about during the budget season. I think I like what you said. We can't afford to be wrong, right? And so that's what I'm. Part of this, I was coming in here to this meeting with Tyler with the thought that I might need a little more time, to kind of digest, and I wanted to hear the presentation and really look into this. But I think it's the right thinking. If we don't invest in this, then the question becomes, how are we making those decisions? And are we just being reactive?
It's true, because we are. That's how we are making decisions. We're reactive. That's it.
Well, it's kind of the hand you've been dealt, unfortunately, right?
Right.
Over all these years, you just have to react and put a Band-Aid on all these issues, but.
But it's not really data driven,
Right.
and so it goes back to that. And then we're talking about utility user tax, and how if we're making a pitch to the public on why it's necessary and why these things, it's like it's important to have data to back that up, to see how the community can develop and grow and other things. But yeah.
Would it be too much to add? I mean, I figure we've come this far without this information. Would it, I don't know, council's thoughts on this, but of taking maybe just a tinge more time. I think it'd be interesting, even if they can zoom in on the next meeting, we can have engagement. And because what I'd like to see is, I'd like to see the 3D model of what they've built, maybe with one of the local agencies. And I think that could go a long ways and helpful to the public too, on the power of this, potential, information. You guys, I'll say this, and I'll be quiet. The decisions we make as a national organization, I can tell you, in the pre-hospital ambulance business, believe it or not, is all data-driven now, and with full-time analysts that do exactly that. They build models that help us make decisions. So, to me, without that, Tyler, if I'm hearing you correct, it's just we don't have that now. Yeah, we're kind of asking and deliberating among.
We are the model.
It's tribal knowledge.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's tribal knowledge. You're right.
So.
I agree with Councilman Warren on, it'd be nice if they show up even through Zoom and present something, which you did a very good job. And by the way, Tyler, not saying that you didn't do a good job, but yeah, it'd be good to have a little more, because we do have to justify this to the public. We're spending 43.
It is, it would be a budget adjustment.
Large amount, so. And I just have 2 questions. Would we be allowed to, maybe perhaps submit some questions as well to the city, if they can look into that? And second, what's the timeline once we approve this? Like, what does it look
It's
like?
about approximately 4 to 5 month turnaround.
Okay. That's good.
And I think just for the public's benefit, that's important, but quite honestly, I mean, it's, you have to justify it to this council too. I mean,
Right.
that's, you know, it has to be
Sure.
something that we support, you know, it's not, I think there's good information that can come from it, but I would agree with Councilmember Wharton. Let's give it maybe another pass at a different meeting with some more information, maybe from the consultants. That'd be important.
Perfect, not a problem.
Question.
Yep.
I had a question, just on cost on the 43,000. You're anticipating that the budget, I'm assuming you wouldn't bring it forward if you couldn't make the budget work with that amount. So it is a budget amount.
Adjustment. It'll
that
be
we
a
have to-
budget adjustment to the general fund. I have it on the staff report under community development because that's the department I think
You
it fit best.
anticipate that that would come from budgeted funds that we will have available, or do you anticipate raising that money in some way?
I'm hoping that that's a budget adjustment is we're going to increase expenses. There's no offset for revenue on that. So short answer, no, I don't have any offset for that. But to me, I personally think it's important. And again, as the
It has value, certainly.
I think it
Yeah,
has
as the-
value
as
that
the-
will pay
yeah,
for itself long
as-
run.
yeah.
My only concern is
Yeah.
coming up with the
Yeah.
43,000, and where do we draw that from? When the time comes to draw that, I mean, and
Yeah.
that's my only concern.
And
Yeah, it
I
would
know
be
where
a-
to draw it from.
at this point, it would be a hit to the general fund reserve.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
At the end
The
of the
general
year.
fund reserve,
An
okay.
extra 43,000 and change.
Okay.
To Councilmember Nava's point about pulling the data out, it's going to be a lot of work on Public Works to actually quantify how much is this street costing for every
Yeah.
Yes.
foot or how much. So that in itself, well, I'm hoping educate me
Sure.
and Public Works and building and everybody what this is really what it's costing, you know.
Right, I
And,
think
and when
that's
you start to
important.
look at the, you know, when you start to look at the value in that, right?
Yep.
You start to look at, if you even wanted to break up the cost of it
Yep.
and just the knowledge that they're gonna gain,
Yeah.
the multiple departments, it
Yep.
really kind of starts to minimize the cost per person.
Yep.
Right, so
Yep.
it's just another way to justify the cost, but I think, I do think it's a valuable effort, I do think so, but I would like some more information, just.
It's important for you to feel
Just-
comfortable
okay.
and wanting to move down that road. It's
I think it's valuable info.
I guess I lied, I do have one more question. Could the bring back, if, in your consult with them, identify some of the lower hanging fruit for most, maybe agencies of our size? And I know it's still just kind of a projection, doesn't mean it's a commitment, but, you know, give us an idea of an ROI. And when I'm thinking of, to my council members in the past, remember the Siemens project where we brought them in?
Yes.
They were gonna do a study on all of our, efficiencies or inefficiencies. And if that program was gonna move ahead, it was because the savings was gonna far outweigh what the
Right.
cost was. And they determined it
did,
wasn't,
yeah.
so
And it
that, the
wasn't.
project stopped. But maybe in a similar fashion, if we can identify just some scenario base, relevant to our city or cities of our size that, hey, this modeling can help you identify X, Y, and Z and the ROI on that, which makes a pretty compelling case.
and that is part of the proposal is
Yeah.
to be able to run scenarios.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I'm sure they want the business. They'll be more than willing to meet
Million
next
or
time.
something, yeah.
Right.
And I realize that for us, you know, $43,000 or $42,000 is a lot of money, but quite honestly, for like the work, the magnitude of it, it's not
Probably not.
it's not an enormous amount of cash. It's just, you know, but it's valuable information. I think it can benefit us.
Yeah.
And I like the comment that you made earlier, Tyler, with respect to just a different way of thinking. And if we are going to progress over the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
we have to think differently. And if you look at what we've done, think about it this way. Look at how much we've done over the past 6 months. Just look at that, right? We've had to think differently. We brought Tyler on as our city manager. We're getting a new finance director here soon. We've changed, you know, Parks and Rec department. We're in the process of hopefully getting somebody to do, you know, community and economic development, right? We've gotten a new police chief. There's a lot of movement in the right direction. And so if we don't think differently, we don't do things differently, we're not gonna be different, right? But we are, so this is just one of those elements. I appreciate you bringing it forward, Tyler. I'm just not ready, at least not today, to move forward, but I'd like some more info.
Understood. One
Yeah.
last comment is that this is going to provide the data, but that's only one aspect. There may be other reasons that you do something besides the dollars,
Right.
So, but at least you'll have that. If we
Right.
move forward, at least you'll have that piece of it. Right now, we don't.
Yeah.
So, doesn't mean that you're tied to well, this says we're going to, no, it's a whole picture.
Yeah,
It's a whole
gives you
picture
input.
thing, so.
Yeah.
Okay. And it becomes ours,
Mhm.
It's our information,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
All right.
I want to make a couple comments,
Oh,
too.
sorry.
Tyler.
Sorry,
I've
Mayor.
let everybody else talk first. but,
Okay.
It's been said 3 or 4 different ways tonight that, we need to think outside the box. I think Donnie said we got to think in an innovative way. George just made a point about, thinking in a different way than we have. And I heard a phrase, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And we're in a position right now, as has been mentioned, with the new executive team, to really get off on the right foot, with a fresh perspective as we turn the page, as we come out of COVID. And as George said, I do really appreciate you doing the research on something different than what we've looked at before to bring it to our attention. It's a difficult ask because it's money that we'll have to spend. And it doesn't always work out that if you got to spend money to make money. But if knowledge is power, and in this case, I really do think it is, because we've been kind of flying blind, just do what other cities have done, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And I think having a very firm grasp of what type of development is hurting us and what would help us going into the future, and as Donnie said, low-hanging fruit, just stuff that we can implement right away, I think that would be very helpful. And I'm sure most or all of us have met with our new police chief, and even there, Chief Duran is putting together a sheet of goals and plans for the near future that I think are they're innovative, they're gonna change the look and the feel of the police department and the way that we communicate back and forth, which is all gonna be good. And so I appreciate these steps that are being taken. in the different
And
departments.
he's also bringing revenue sources for his ideas, which
That's
is
right.
great. He
That's
doesn't
right.
just say, hey, I got this. He says, here's how I'm going to pay for it,
Yeah.
which I love.
Exactly.
Which I love, so.
And so, as different council members are asking for, can they give us some more info as to, ahead of time before we commit to this, what the deliverables are going to be. I would like to see, if they can give us a track record of similarly sized cities that they have given recommendations to, if those cities have implemented those recommendations, and over what period of time, they've seen a benefit or a change within their agencies, I think that would be helpful, because it's not just, here's the data that we have, but it's how have other cities implemented this and benefited from it. I think that would be helpful. And I know, like, I've done some brief research into Urban 3, and it's amazing the data that they compile in such a way that's just very readable and understandable, even for lay people who aren't engineers or, urban planners or what have you. So I do think this would be of great benefit to Brawley, and I also think that there's going to be information that they're going to be able to pull out of, the tax assessor's office that they don't really want to hand out to us, or that's going to take a huge amount of staff time to get those numbers. And so
But it's out there,
it is,
It's out
but
there.
will we spend $43,000, in staff time trying to get that kind of info
But-
and not
but-
have the
yeah, no,
not have the data
but-
compiled?
But I'll tell you, look, it goes back to data. Donnie had mentioned it, and it's data is so important, especially nowadays. And you can compile it, you can access it. I'm able to run reports today that are on commercial and residential properties, right? And so I can pull the tax record, and it's immediate, like what they're paying in taxes, and the value of the property is super, super, super accurate, where it wasn't like 10 years ago. Now it is. And it's very thorough reports, and I'm able to pull that information like in 3, 4, 5 seconds, and it's super accurate, right? And so we don't have it in a way that maybe they can compile it, right? But I'm sure they have some sort of system that where they're able to do it and they can model it like they're doing in the. So I'm sure the information's out there, because I can access it. To compile it together is the tough part. But I'm telling you, like the tax information is there, right? Property taxes, values are there, whether that's commercial or residential values. Commercial values are a little bit more difficult in Brawley and Imperial County, but it's there. That information is out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that it's there, and it would be up to somebody to spend the time to pull that
To be able
information
to
and compile it.
formulate something where
Yeah.
it compiles it, yeah.
Yeah, plus, but I think there's some other stuff that would be harder for us to quantify, things like this type of development or the streets that we have to put into, a new development that's not infill. Really, what is the overall cost for us versus the revenue that comes from a development like that? I think that would be invaluable.
And 20 years out compared to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
And, yeah.
So, yeah, I think, a little further information from Urban 3 would be helpful, but,
I think it'd be really good.
Yeah,
Good
no,
information, yeah.
that's,
but yeah, I'm very encouraged by this recommendation, because I just think he'll kind of start us off on the right foot as we make decisions, into the future for what kind of development. And I think this would help the Planning Commission as well. And this data from the backup, it looks like it's ongoing. Like, we can add to it as new developments are built. We can update the graphs and the data that they have given us, so that we can see, comparisons from year to year or 5 years down the road or what have you. I think that'll be invaluable. So it's not just about data, because you can have cascades of data and not know what to do with it.
right.
But if it's presented in a way that's just completely understandable, that's what we're looking for. And researching Urban 3 some bit, it looks like that's what they
That's a key
provide.
point. You got to understand what's presented.
Right.
And if you don't understand what's being presented to you, it's useless. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so then we're just looking for a little more,
Next meeting.
yeah, at the next meeting.
I will try to engage them to be here, not be here, but Zoom in on the 2nd, and for any questions and a little presentation on their part.
Awesome.
Yep.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Okay, moving on to item 5A. These are departmental reports. The monthly staffing report for February 2021, prepared by Personnel and Risk Management Administrator Shirley Bonias. Backup is on page 498.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Shirley Bonias, Personnel and Risk Management, on page 498. I think that's an all-time high page for this report. You will find an overview of our personnel as of February 1. I apologize, on the Parks and Recreation, all you got is the date. There was some words in there, but obviously they disappeared in the printing. We have our new Parks and Recreation manager starting on February 22nd, 2021. Her name is Rachel Fonseca. She's currently working for a smaller community in the Parks and Rec Department and has written grants. So we're very excited about this addition to our staff. We are still recruiting for a library manager. We still have 3 people, police officers and backgrounds per chief, and 1 dispatcher we're trying to work through to get those final 2 positions filled. And Lambs continues to work and delivering packages, and our interim library manager, Chris Carter, is still helping us out over at the library. Any questions? I'll be more than happy to answer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Item 5B, update on emergency construction project at the Brawley Water Treatment Plant to replace components of 2 sedimentation basins, presented by Public Works Director Guillermo Cias
From San Francisco.
from San Francisco. You're muted, Guillermo.
You're muted.
He's still on vacation.
Can't get you.
Good evening.
There you
There we go. Yes.
Yes.
Hi. I'm glad to report that this project finally was concluded on February 13th. They completed all the pending items and the punch list, and is operating 100%. I'm just will come back probably the next council meeting to ask for authorization for an additional work that had to be done on change order regarding an actuator replacement by a subcontractor, but finally is completed.
Very good.
Okay. Good deal.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Almost done with that. One more change order and we can strike that one off the list.
Yes.
Item 6A is informational item, a record of building permits for January 2021 in the city of Brawley, prepared by Oscar Escalante, our interim building official. That is on pages 499 and 500 for your viewing pleasure. Item 7, city treasurer report. 7A, quarterly investment summary for December 31st, 2020. Also presented by Tyler Salcido, city manager. Backup is on pages 501 through 506.
Okay, what I'll review here relatively quickly, and if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer them, is a summary of the detailed investment summary report that's provided quarterly, which lists every single investment that the city has. Here in front of you is the summary. So as you can see, for December 31st, 2020, we had 63% in cash, non-negotiable CDs, 12%, negotiable CDs, et cetera, 21, and for a total of $49 million. That's what makes up our investment portfolio. Investment activity for the quarter. Purchased this last quarter, which would be October, November, December. Non-negotiable CDs, about 750 from First Imperial at 1.5%. Sun Community in December, those were purchased in October, in December of 1.25%. And one negotiable CD from Bank Hapolyum in New York. So you can see the rates there are pretty low.
Can you pronounce that again? Can you say it again, please?
Hapolyum?
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah.
L'chaim.
Okay, and securities redeemed this last quarter. And I think 4 out of the, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of the 5 were called, which means the interest rates were so high that they were callable notes. They called them in early. As you can see there, in October, there was 3 from 1.75 to 1.8. In November, BMW Bank there at 2.25, and then a Jefferson Financial Credit Union at 2.05. As a point of reference, for currently LAIF, which has the vast majority of our funds, currently about 15 million in one place at LAIF, that's the government agency. It's paying today 0.41%.
0.41.
Yeah, so.
Almost nothing.
And we're anticipating rates to stay low for a while. But I think maybe not as long as originally anticipated. But in the short term, the rates are going to stay where they're at, and just my opinion on that. And lastly, the maturity distribution of when they mature by year, as you can see right there. 2021, we got another call it $2 million. 2022, $4 million, et cetera, down the line. That's a real brief summary of the investment report that's is required to come before you quarterly. Any questions on any of this?
Tyler, I'm glad you didn't mention GameStop or Bitcoin, so.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Johnny's on the back.
Would have solved their issues.
I didn't see that.
Unfortunately, that's not allowed by the state of California as an appropriate investment for the agency, but we did have Tampa Bay, so that was good on the Super Bowl. Just kidding, that's a joke.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Looks like we're doing.
We got that.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8, city council member reports. We'll start with council member Castro.
Yes, first off, just want to apologize for missing the last meeting. Just a family issue, but it's taken care of. Don't ask my wife that. She probably said something different. And, that text that went back and forth between you and I, right, was that we're very lucky. My wife is actually at the doctor and a friend took her, but, seeing her disabled to a certain extent, 'cause she doesn't stay still, but just what it would cost to replace what my wife does at home. And I think what you did last week, what happened at the last meeting, was, honoring marriage for a week. I think it hit home, like when I was listening to the meeting and listening to the stats and the numbers and all that, and which I wholeheartedly, support, was that week. It hit home because I was like, all of a sudden, I see my mother-in-law running around helping, and I see the kids helping, but it still feels like so much. And between all of us, we can't equal what she is and does for our family. So, she's getting better. But so I do apologize for missing the meeting. But obviously, family does come first and certain, always. All right. Besides that, I've been a little busy. Work has kept me busy. I drove up to Coachella this Saturday, and I have a lot of family in that area. And I remember the changes from when I used to go there as a kid to what it is now, and how the parks have, how the city's grown, the beautiful parks, the way they've developed in a very smart way. And that's why when you mentioned that E3 report, I think that goes back, some cities have done that and applied it very well. I'm sure they have other different circumstances, but Coachella is a city that's very similar to ours. And I requested a meeting with our assembly member and kind of picked his brain a little about some of the bonds that are out there. Prop 68 came up, and not today, Tyler, but sir, if you could maybe at the next meeting provide us an update. I know that the deadline's coming, and just kind of see where we're at with Prop 68 funds and what we've applied for and what we've been awarded, I guess, or where we're at with that. But it was a very productive meeting, and that's why I also asked for those numbers earlier, because I'm able to take that back in those specific meetings and bring that up to our legislators and say, hey, man, some of this stuff isn't fair. Some of this stuff is hurting us more than it's helping, and let's find a way to do this with a plan to help us if you hurt us, or with the plan to maybe not do it if it's going to hurt us. So what's the value in the things that we're doing up at the state level, and are they considering communities like ours? So, but that's about it, sir. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councilman Castro. Councilman Wharton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a lot to report, obviously, as we continue as far as getting out and having contact with the public in that way. But I'm sure as all of us continue to field input as well as issues that come up, most of them minor enough. I also want to thank staff, Tyler, of course, routing them his direction, and obviously they get taken care of. But what I do want to just take a moment just to mention, I've been pretty involved, even outside of Imperial County nationally, on the whole vaccine front. And I think just looking ahead on behalf of the city, this is going to become more and more of an issue as the tiers progress, and we're having, make available vaccination to really the public at large. Right now, it's kind of been like a little bit of a pyramid starting at the top with a small part of the, essential workers, et cetera, all the tiers that as we know it. But this is just a general comment, something we should probably think about coming up in the future. I mentioned something about lining up for or dollars. I don't have the exact methodology yet, but the thought was there are cities, some large, some smaller, that are going direct with vaccination clinics, obtaining vaccine, getting that support. In other words, there's, we kind of by default want to stick with and follow, as we should, our county health and our county as the lead. But one thing that makes us different is we have Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District. So it was interesting just reading the letter into, about the COVID clinic. I mean, the vaccination clinic that took place, and getting the kudos, which we appreciate. But really, that was going to be germane to the topic I was going to bring up. Of we ought to really think about what avenues are available, and I'm happy to share a little bit of what I know, maybe with Tyler in that discussion, but I wanted to bring it up first, kind of to council. When that day comes, can we potentially position our community so we can maybe potentially vaccinate a much broader? And there are cities in San Diego that have been successful at even going beyond the tiers and making available just by sheer quantity of vaccines they've been able to
Chula
obtain.
Vista, I believe.
Yeah. Chula Vista, I think some of the border,
Yeah.
the things I'm thinking of are some of the tribal reservations and communities have vaccinated everybody.
And I think there's an argument to be made. I mean, we are an essential area out here. We're near the border. We're way underrepresented, right? And so we have other ailments throughout this community. So I think that's a great.
I think we're behind.
I think it's.
We have 180,000 people.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise, yeah, we're behind some of the major cities.
Yeah, we're having COVID vaccination clinics with 300 vaccines. I mean,
Right.
Guys, I'm just saying, if we don't talk about that now, that's going to become increasingly an issue.
We should have thousands to cover our citizens here.
Yeah. So I'm just, as I'm coming in information, I feel I, owe it to, not just, here at council, but to the community that, at least given that effort, of finding out what's available, how we can help to add our voice to increase those quantities. And we're in a unique position because we have a healthcare district right within our city. So that's it. Mr. Mayor, I don't want to take up too much time. So
Thank you, Donnie. Councilman Nava.
Keep it super brief. I have reached out to Tyler and staff on a few occasions now, and they've been able to address some community concerns. One as recent as today, so I want to thank you, Tyler, and staff, of course, for addressing that. There was at Guadalupe Park, there was a transient, and then there was some graffiti, and it was really in bad shape. It looked awful. And so that was addressed in record time, Tyler. Thank you and staff for addressing that. I'll tell you, people do recognize it. They notice it, and they respond well to it. So anytime we can address it, I think the assumption, too, the public has is that we know where everything's taking place. And so if they don't reach out to me and they don't call me, they don't tell me, I'm not going to know. So I do appreciate it when people reach out. And it's, I mean, how hard is it for us as council members to text Tyler and say, hey, can you address this or look at this? Especially when you have like photo evidence. I do that often. And
Some easier than others with the council.
No, understood, right? Right? But I appreciate it, Tyler and staff. And a message out to the public. I mean, if there are concerns that we can address, we certainly will. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, George. Mayor Pro Tem Couchman.
Okay. I've been approached, well, I saw some things on Facebook, and I know I've been approached by some people regarding two issues out there. One's fees for usage of the park, and I'm sure we're going to get into that discussion again, so I'll kind of leave it there. I think there are some community organizations that are concerned about the fees. I do think in some ways they're necessary because we're charging some of the people, and I think we have to charge everybody kind of on an equal basis. I do think we probably need the money in order to keep the parks operating, so it's always a concern of ours, but I will say that there is some discussions going on out there in the community, and so we're getting asked those kind of questions. So we'll probably be bringing that up in the future. As far as thefts goes, I noticed in Facebook there was a lot of activity on some thefts occurring. I
So they
think
tagged you on
Joel
Facebook.
Gonzalez, they tagged us all, I think, on Facebook
10,000
about
comments.
some thefts occurring on both the east side of town and other areas of town along that alley that runs along the east side of town, east side of Main Street. And there was a lot of discussion, I think 75 comments on Facebook regarding that. I think most of the public understands that under the COVID type regulations, the police will stop somebody or they see them committing a misdemeanor, they'll write them out a ticket or some type of infraction, they write them out a ticket and they're released back into the general public. They do not take them to jail unless it's a pretty big crime, and they don't, because they don't want to take them into jail because of the COVID issues. And so we have those kind of things going on right now. Also, in some cases, the crime doesn't warrant long-term jail time or anything like that where the police are going to be involved in that. So I think most people understand that, but we are getting more I'm getting more interaction with the public on that. So there are some things that are going on around town that I think we need to address. And I don't know how we solve it because there are certain state laws and there are certain, county officials are involved in that also. So, but maybe we need to look into that for the future. It'll probably be a topic of discussion that we'll see for the future. I did have the privilege of being present at 2 of the COVID vaccination clinics, both one that was held at Pioneers Memorial Hospital and one that was held at IVC. These were the second round of vaccination clinics. I will say that making an appointment is a problem. I encourage people to still continue to attempt to do that. The making of the appointment is a problem. The actual clinics are run very, very well. They're very efficient. The staff are very informed, very well trained, and they get people in and out very quickly. And I think they do a fine job with that. And that's everybody. That's both Pioneers Memorial Hospital staff, our city employees if they're involved, the IVC staff, security, the sheriff's department. Everybody kind of comes together, the health department, everybody kind of comes together, and the clinics are actually working very well. We don't have enough vaccines, as Councilmember Wharton has brought up, but as we're getting vaccines, those clinics do run effectively. Getting the appointment, on the other hand, is another issue. And what I would like to do is try to get all of our seniors vaccinated and some of our emergency personnel that have not been vaccinated. I'd like to see us give an emphasis on getting those individuals vaccinated. The senior issue being, I think they get frustrated. Sometimes the system online crashes or they don't have access to that online type service. If they're a dinosaur like me, it's difficult for me to do that kind of thing. But sometimes you have to be persistent. Patient but persistent. It doesn't do you any good to get angry. And I worry about that sometimes because people do get very angry. But they just need to be patient and persistent. I was able to arrange for an appointment for someone, and it took me 65 attempts by phone to make that appointment, but I eventually got it done. I'm pretty stubborn like that. So I encourage everybody to be patient but persistent, to keep pushing for the vaccines, and also for the public to bring it to the attention of their elected officials that they need more vaccine down here. And I think that'll be important to us because of our location next to an international border, because of our location where a lot of people move back and forth within Imperial County. I think it's important that we have more access to vaccines in our area. So with that, I think I will end it and go back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sam.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could just have another minute, I apologize. Sure. I yielded my time last time, but I did want to say this, and I had it in my notes before I scrambled all this. I want to say I do appreciate our city managers' work, all the help on getting my feet wet, and also our police chief. Today we had a long conversation. And I just want to, George mentioned it out to the public, like we don't know what's happening, and it's hard to address it. But we are on top of a lot of things, and there's a lot of information coming our way, and we are reading all the comments. It's important for the public to know that we do care, that what the things that they're saying, like, certain people being turned away from the county jail because of COVID, those are real issues that our police department is facing. But we do care, we are listening, we know what's happening, and we are constantly addressing or brainstorming and trying to come up with ways of how we can improve this current situation. So to those folks, especially the Facebook folks, they kind of, yeah. I'm sorry, my skin isn't as thick as it should be yet. Know that we are looking at that and that we do care and that your priorities and your concerns are ours as well. And I think it's important for us to say that. Sometimes I think that's one of the things that I mentioned in the past to my fellow council members before I was on city council was that maybe sometimes I know that I know that we're doing the work, but sometimes we fail at communicating that to the public. That's all I got. So I apologize for taking more time than I should have.
No problem. Yeah, that can be an issue with social media, especially where people are wanting some kind of input from council members, and there are, you kind of fall into a gray area of Brown Act violation, perhaps, if you get more than 2 council members commenting or even reacting to a post online, if it has anything to do with a vote that we might have to take in the future. That's not always the case, but so, and then sometimes it's just, people are more willing to be insulting or aggressive online than they would be if they were face to face, and so some of that it doesn't do much good to respond to it. But certainly there are people with legitimate concerns and questions that yeah, it is up to us to respond in one fashion or another, whether it's online or calling that person directly if we have their contact info. But it's certainly opened up a whole new world for people to be able to voice their concerns to local government. And sometimes it's difficult to hear it the way it's presented. But I appreciate you coming on board and having the concern that way. And we each have kind of our constituency, if you want to call it that. We're all responsible to the whole city, but each of us has, certain groups of people have our ear and can, transmit their concerns to us. So it's important that each one of us does our particular part in, allaying their fears or handing them the information they need or helping them solve the problem. And that's kind of that's the most positive outcome of that type of interaction, is that they present a legitimate concern and we're able to help them solve that problem. And that's very rewarding in this setting. It doesn't always happen that way, but it's good when it does, for sure. It helps you remember why you're here.
And if people are really upset, just blame Mayor Hamby or
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem
Kelly.
Couchman.
Yeah.
Either or.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
It's Mayor Hamby. Do you have
Just
That's
don't
right,
blame,
it's my
just don't
turn.
blame the rookie. eh?
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, we can do
You don't have
that.
to extend on
That's
that.
an
Yeah,
idea.
you get a little buffer, little wiggle room.
You
to
got
begin
6 more months of honeymoon.
Right, and then it's over?
That's
The
it's
honeymoon's
over.
over.
It's
Yeah.
all gone.
Yeah, well, as far as activities or events that I've been involved in, meetings, I was part of a city select committee for LAFCO. They just needed mayors and of cities to put together nominations for their committee, for the LAFCO commission. And so we went through kind of who's been on that commission over the last couple of decades. And as it turned out, I believe it was Calexico that hadn't had a representative on that board for quite some time. So we opted to go with, I believe it was a council member from Calexico as the commission member, and the alternate, I believe, was from Imperial. Those are, I don't think that's been completely decided yet, but that's the direction they were headed. So anyway, we'll continue to get updates from LAFCO, I'm sure, and requests for new areas to be, whether it's annexed into the city or added to our expense sheet or whatever. I had the pleasure of riding with the Border Patrol mounted unit through parts of town last week, and our police chief, Jimmy Duran, rode alongside me, and that was a good interaction. They've got all kinds of concerns with their changing job descriptions as the new administration comes in federally, but they are, many of them are either Brawley residents or, Imperial residents. They live close by, and our concerns are their concerns because they're residents as well as Border Patrol agents. And so it was informative to ride alongside of them and get their perspective on issues like crime and crime prevention. And Chief Duran, having him along was very helpful to kind of bounce some ideas back and forth there. But it was also really neat just to see families being out, in their front yards and as the horses came by, so the kids could come out and pet them. And one little girl was having a birthday party out in the front yard, and we rode right up to the sidewalk and let the kids pet the horses. So that was a pretty memorable birthday for her. She had that and a shaved ice trailer there. So they didn't offer us any Hawaiian
Didn't
shaved
get a
ice.
snow cone?
I've attended a couple of the Public Health Department's COVID update Zoom meetings, and today's was delayed from last Friday because they had the vaccination clinic last Friday, and so very informative. A lot of numbers are thrown out there, but Tony Rojodas, I believe he said there were 26,000 either call-ins or online registrations made for appointments for the vaccines. I think he said there were 3,000 or 3,600 doses, so 26,000 applicants for that many doses. So Sam may have been 75 of those phone calls. I don't know.
Yeah, my 65, I counted them.
Okay, 65 phone calls.
And then it was on a rotary dial. So it was like, it took like 2 days.
Nice.
Huh?
That's
Yeah.
cold. That's just cold.
George gets the prize for the comment of the night.
That's a good one.
Sam's,
Can with
Yeah.
a string.
I could
There
just,
you go.
Meeting it.
yeah, I could just adjourn the meeting at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, that's horrible, man.
I'm just gonna walk out and leave.
Are you gonna let him
Right?
do this to me, Mr. Mayor? I mean, this is not.
Drop the mic
That's
right there.
inappropriate, Judge. This is the mayor pro temp here,
Yeah.
so. They've given me a PowerPoint of slides. If anybody wants that, I can forward it to you just to see some of their statistics. One thing that one of the county supervisors is requesting that we do whatever we can to lobby the state for more vaccines, whether it's through letters to our representatives or, or going on the governor's Facebook page or whatever. But I think the buzzword of the year is equity. I've heard that in so many different settings. I mean, different boards that I've been on and here within the city council and with the county. And, it has to do with as you allot the vaccines, and not just vaccines, but in any area where the public interest is concerned, equity comes into play when you've got underserved communities and you need to emphasize the services that you provide to those communities because, and they call it equity. And so, with that being the buzzword, we're not really seeing that playing out with the vaccine allotment because it seems like, I think Mr. Rojotis mentioned Sonoma County. They have fewer people as a county than Imperial County does. It's very similarly sized, but obviously completely different area, demographics, what have you. They've had roughly double the vaccine doses there as we have had here. So clearly equity is not coming into play in that situation. So it's not, the point was that it's not, unduly hounding our lobbyists or our state representatives or our governor to go after them constantly with, not just, basic requests, but really, maybe not Facebook keyboard warrior style, but, strongly urging our state representatives to lobby for more vaccine doses here because we're not getting, what other counties are getting. And certain counties that are way more advantaged than we are. So anyway, that was one of the requests that was made at the meeting today. Also, let's see. Yeah, I guess that was it. Oh, I got a phone call and a letter from a representative from the Catholic Diocese from San Diego that also handles Imperial County. And I forwarded that on to Tyler, but talking about Guadalupe Park, George, and they're looking at perhaps either selling it or trying to come up with a way to gain some revenue from it, whether it's stakeholders or soccer clubs or what have you. So anyway, that'll be something that they're looking at. If there's no other way to produce revenue from it, then they'll probably be looking at selling it. So we can look into that. But yeah, I guess that's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I had attended the library board meeting this last week on behalf of Mr. Hamby, who was out riding horses.
Yes, thank you.
And so I had to go to the library board meeting, which I do enjoy. It was maybe the shortest meeting we've ever had on record. It was a Zoom meeting, and I don't think it lasted like maybe 35 minutes or something like that, maybe an hour. It was like a very short meeting. So, but I was pleased to be there and talk to the ladies, and the library is moving forward with what services they can provide under the circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I think our interim library manager does a good job of reining Sam in when he's on those calls to keep him from elongating the meeting.
They
So
commented about my talking all the time, but I didn't see it, I mean, I don't.
Pick on Sam.
Are you figuring that out?
He's a good sport about things. That's
Oh,
why.
I know.
All right, moving on to item 9, city manager report.
Just real briefly, to add on to Councilmember Nava's addressing of the issues, I just want to emphasize that I'm merely the conduit, and the rapid response that was done today, as well as other times, is by multiple departments. Today it was police, graffiti abatement, and parks all worked together as a team rapidly to get that improvement cleaned up, improved and cleaned up, and the graffiti removed. So again, I echo his appreciation for the response of staff.
Thank
That's all
you
I
for
have.
that.
Great.
And thank you to staff again, for appreciate it. You know, we need to be more vocal about that. I really do believe that. You know, we need to make sure that, because people don't know who is addressing it. They maybe think it's the parks crew or whatever it is, but it is multiple departments that are addressing those things. I think it's important that people understand that. You know, it just goes back to our messaging. What do we want people to know? It goes back to that. So, anyway, thank you again very much. I do appreciate it, and the public does as well. Thank you.
All right. Item 10, the city attorney report.
I'll just say that the police solved a purse snatching at my karate school the other day. Got the property back, most of the property back within an hour, which is pretty darn good, considering we figured that was the end of that. And then fire guys came and rescued my mother-in-law this weekend, so we appreciate that too.
Your mother-in-law.
She okay?
She is okay. They were giving her some kind of blood pressure medicine, and she doesn't have high blood pressure. So
Man.
that didn't work out very good.
Yeah. I'm glad she's all right.
All right, thanks, Bill. Item 11, city clerk report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, then at this time, I will adjourn our public meeting, and our next regular meeting will be March 2nd at 6 PM.
But we're going to close session.
But we are going to go into closed
Yeah.
session.
Session brief.